What's up, Illumineers? Welcome back to another InkSpot Games video. And over the last couple weeks or so, there have been a handful of spoiled cards for the next Lorcana set, Rise of the Floodborn. I just kind of wanted to go over them a little bit, give my initial thoughts on them. Hopefully, sometime throughout this week or next week, I can finally test some of these cards out and make a video on, make a gameplay video on what I think about them and just see how they perform on Pixelborn. But for right now, we're just going to kind of go over some of the new cards that dropped that were spoiled, and like I said, I'll give you my thoughts on them. But before we get to that, if you like this kind of content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that good stuff. We keep climbing in subscribers every day, which is really exciting, so let's keep that going. And with that, let's take a look at some of these new cards. Alright, so the first one we have here has actually been making a little bit of waves on the internet in terms of if people think it's good, if people think it's bad, and this is I'm Stuck, which is an inkable 1-drop action that is Amethyst, and the effect reads, chosen exerted character can't ready at the start of their next turn. So essentially what you'd be using this with, if your opponent exerted a character for whatever reason, whether it was challenging or questing or using an effect, this card basically stops them from doing that next turn because they can't ready at the start of their next turn. So the fact that this card is cheap, it only costs 1 and it's inkable, like that alone tells you, well, this is pretty good. Like this might be useful against like those really big characters, those huge impactful characters in the late game. But in the early game, I don't know how impactful this will be. A lot of people think that this is very win more, that like at the end of the day, like this might win you some games in niche situations, but it's not necessarily a staple. I'm not sure actually. Like this card reads like very good. Like your opponent not being able to ready a character can ultimately lose them the game, especially with a cheap card like this. And maybe you have ways to get actions back, like do it again or whatever. And it's also inkable, which is nice. But I think this will see some play. I think this is one of those cards where like people are going to justify not playing it in their deck because like, oh, I don't actually need it. But when it's used against them, and they lose because of it, they'll lose their minds. Like this card kind of reminds me a little bit of Befuddle, where like Befuddle is one of those cards where some Amethyst decks run it, but others don't, and it's not like a general piece of removal in all decks. Some people just don't think it's that impactful to hold slots in your deck. I think I'm Stuck is going to kind of have a similar challenge when it comes to deck building, but there are going to be people who play this card. I do think this is a card that you're going to have to be prepared for and be ready for. Is it like the best card ever or an instant staple? Probably not, but I think this will definitely see play. So let's go ahead to the next card. And our next card is a new Flynn Rider, who is another Emerald Flynn Rider, by the way. Confident Vagabond. He's an inkable 1-drop who has 1 attack, 3 blocking, and gains for 1 lore. And basically, he's also a Storyborn Hero Prince. And like, he's essentially the Emerald version of Minnie Mouse, the Ruby Minnie Mouse, the 1-drop. And he's inkable, he's a 1-drop, you know, can trade. I mean, the 1 attack isn't great, but the 3 willpower is fine. Like, this is like one of these situations where I feel like this probably isn't going to be the 1-drop you play, most likely, but like, it tells you that like, I feel like this next set probably isn't going to be super big in power creep. And what I mean is that they're still printing cards like this, where it's like, okay, it's not that great. You're probably not going to see a lot of it in Emerald decks, but like they're still printing it as a card, as a concept. Like I just said, there's a Ruby version of this card exactly that's just Minnie Mouse. I don't think this card is that impactful. It's a 1-drop, it's inkable, it's nice. If you value the 3 willpower, then fine. But I just don't think it's like this card that's going to elevate Emerald to, elevate it that much. Let's go to the next card here. Now this is Cogsworth. He is a 2-cost inkable character who is Sapphire. Talking Clock, Storyborn ally, has 2 attack, 3 blocking, gains 1 lore, and reads, wait a minute, your characters with Reckless gain the effect of gain 1 lore. So essentially, any character with Reckless can quest ultimately. Like, which characters have Reckless? Doesn't Maui have Reckless? So like, if you have this and Maui on your board, your Maui can gain 1 lore, can essentially quest. So that's pretty cool. I do think that people are going to run him for the next one we're going to look at, but he's okay. He's a 2-drop, pretty decent stats for a 2-drop actually for Sapphire here. Gains 1 lore. He's a fine card. I think he'll see some play. People are going to experiment with him, but mainly they're going to experiment with him because of this guy, which is another Cogsworth, Grandfather Clock. This artwork's really cool. It's like an old man Cogsworth. A 5-drop inkable Sapphire character, 2 attack, 5 blocking, a shift 3. So essentially what happens is you play him, that costs 2, and you ink another card, then you shift 3. Like, a shift 3 isn't that hard to accomplish here early. Now he has Ward, which is nice. He quests for 2 lore, and Unwind is his effect. Your other characters gain Resist, and we all know Resist is kind of a new keyword for the next set. And +1, and dealt Resist +1. So this is pretty darn good. Your other characters, all your other characters gain Resist. So like, if you have like good bodyguards out there, or bigger characters, or some like 1-drops that have like 2 attack, or like and 2 defense, and they're able to stay on the board for 1 more turn because of this guy, like he can make the game pretty annoying for you really fast. Like, he has 5 blocking and he has Ward, so it's not like he's the easiest to deal with. And giving all your other characters Resist +1, it gives you the potential, if that means keeping certain characters on the board for an extra turn for whatever reason, that can lead you to a win. Plus he gains 2 lore. I think this guy is going to see a pretty good amount of play. Is he like meta breaking? We'll see. We'll see how much of an impact Resist has on the game overall. I think if you're able to build a board with a bunch of characters, and now they all have Resist with this shift 3 character who's like really hard to deal with and also quests for 2, I think this Cogsworth is really, really good. Alright, next we have an action, a 2-cost non-inkable emerald action called Bounce. And it simply reads, return a chosen character of yours to your hand to return another chosen character to their player's hand. So it looks like you have to choose your character first and return it to your hand in order to do this second effect, essentially. So you immediately think of Mother Knows Best, where you spend 3, that's also non-inkable, and like you bounce your, see why it's called bounce, your opponent's card back to their hand. Now this card I think is deceptively good. It only costs 2. People are looking at this like, but there's cards where, especially once you build up enough resources, if you like bounce it back to your hand and has a ability on summon, this can be really good. It's like if you're in a situation where, let's just say, I don't know, you have the 3-drop Maleficent that draws you a card, and you're able to get that effect down twice while bouncing, getting rid of another opponent's character, that can be pretty strong. I think this card is sneaky good. It does need to be played in the right situation though. Like playing it where it's going to benefit you to get a card back into your hand to ultimately, most likely, immediately throw it back down into the field or next turn or whatever. I think this card, I actually kind of like this card. At first I was kind of like meh, but I see this card having some pretty decent application. And the last card we're going to look at here is the Prince. He is a 3-drop inkable character, Steel. He has 1 attack, 3 willpower, and he is a bodyguard who quests for 2 and has resist. So like, again, a bodyguard that's even hard to deal with who only costs 3 and quests for 2, he looks like one of the better bodyguards that has been released. Like, immediately, I feel like he power creeps Hercules. Like, yeah, Hercules has the 3 attack or whatever, but like, he has resist and quests for more and costs 3 and is inkable. I think like, if you're building a deck around bodyguards, he's a must include. Now, we'll see how he fits into like the more competitive decks. I think he almost kind of power creeps some of the other bodyguards here, because again, he only costs 3, he has resist, gains 2 lore, not the easiest to deal with. And man, if you have like that Cogsworth and now he has resist +2, whew, he could be pretty difficult to deal with. 3 is a respectable defense, and he's not that expensive to play, so you can play him in the early game. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in play in Amber Steel decks with the Simba, because then I think this is really good. I think we're going to see this at least a little bit. This is one of the better bodyguards out there. So yeah, so these were the spoiled cards that we've gathered up the last week or so, last 2 weeks or so, and those are just my initial thoughts. Hey, maybe I'll look back on this video a year from now and I was totally wrong. Who knows? This is just my initial thoughts. I haven't really play tested these yet, just looking at them, seeing how I feel, whatever. So yeah, if you liked the video, be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And Illumineers, I'll see you on the next one. Later.